The conference of Member of Parliament Mr. Andrey Artemenko is about to begin. Let me give the floor to Mr. Andrey Artemenko, and then we're going to have a section of questions and answers. Good day, respectable journalists and citizens of Ukraine who are watching us live. I'd like to remind you that you are going to be able to watch us live on my Facebook page. I'd like to thank Secretariat of Verkhovna Rada for providing this venue for me and for my press conference. I also would like to inform you that a few hours ago, my lawyer, Mr. Leonid Simakov, who represents me in a case of state treasoning that I'm charged with, Chapter 11, Article 1, is not going to be able to participate in this press conference because a few hours ago he has been charged with something that is unclear to us by investigator of Department 6 together with Alpha Group Spetsnaz and also with unknown group of people, and they are investigating on him and as I said, on something that is unknown to us. I'm also not confident about the fact that he's going to be able to participate in the questioning that is of mine that is scheduled for 3 p.m. in prosecutor office of Crimea. But this is not the theme of my press conference. But I also confident that my lawyer is going to be fine. Just once again, before we're going to begin, I would like to say that I'm not going to be able to share with every bit of information that I have prepared for international community as well as for the Ukrainian public. The reason for it, as you know, I've signed some obligations on Friday of non-disclosure of certain information that is under investigation. So therefore, I would not be able to answer on every question, but whatever I can, I will do. I suggest we're going to limit time for our press conference down to 30 minutes, and then we're going to have a section of questions and answers. Stop the war and regulate the conflict are the main challenges for every politician who really cares for the future of the country, whether his personal political bonuses. A current government and its team have not yet provided the solution for Ukrainian people, and the country doesn't know how to find a way out of this crisis. So the solution has to be found by other politicians, members of the parliament who are going to be ready to build a good country rather than wasteland. Yanukovych's regime has been doing a lot of selective justice, but the current regime have gotten even further to the selective political without legally defined crime. I'm persecuted based on my political statements. I have not yet been officially convicted. It's pretty funny for me to hear that I've exceeded certain powers or that I'm convicted of treasoning. Member of Parliament has the right to initiate actual domestic and foreign policy issues. It is his direct duty, preserved in the Constitution, and a specific deputy power. The Parliament determines the principles of foreign policy. According to the law on the status of People's Deputy of Ukraine, the deputy is obligated to protect the interests of the voters and the state. For this, he has the right to enter into relations with other states on their behalf. The restrictions imposed by relevant presidential decree number 841 from 1996, they only applicable to the representatives of the executive branch. Any attempts to restrict the political activity of a people's deputy are unconstitutional. They indicate the president's desire to establish a dictatorship. These actions are subject to at least 2 articles of the Criminal Code: change of the social order and obstructing to the work of the People's Deputy. The law on the status of People's Deputy of Ukraine, Chapter 17, People's deputy, who do not have special powers to represent the parliament, which is Verkhovna Rada, has the right, however, to enter into relations with officials and state bodies of a sovereign state only on his own behalf. In relations with officials, state bodies, and foreign nationals, member of parliament has the right to defend the independence, sovereignty, the interest of the state, its citizens, without causing any harm to the above. The Constitution of Ukraine, Article 34. Everyone is guaranteed the right to freedom of thought and speech, free expression of views and beliefs. Everyone has the right freely to collect, store, use, and distribute information orally, in writing, or in any other way upon his choice. It's a shame that behind the attempts to establish authoritarianism stand the people who used to be the victims of the regime of Yanukovych. They were not able to keep the integrity of the states and its sovereignty, to investigate and punish those responsible for the crime during the Maidan. Today, they have turned into the new Yanukovych regime, but even more cynical and arrogant. Their accusations of treason are negligible. You need to judge those who have given Crimea up without a single shot, those who agreed to the Minsk format, which has no mention of Crimea. High treason is surrounding Ukrainian territory of Crimea to the aggressor. To wage war and to pay taxes in the same time to the budget of the aggressor, continuing corrupt practices. Sooner or later, the justice will be restored in Ukraine. Those who are guilty for every death during the Maidan, for surrender of the Crimea, for the war, gonna be held responsible. Yes, I've had such negotiations with my partners in the United States. Ukraine needs to be heard, while the Ukrainian position of the new US administration is still forming. It's not too late now, but it could as well be too late tomorrow. I'm trying to distance Ukraine from the anti-Trump, senseless policy of the current leadership of Ukraine. We cannot allow this policy to spoil our relations with the United States. Those who are getting jealous about not being involved, they should address this matter to those advisors who have been given such disgraceful advices in the past, rather than pressing charges against me to the General Prosecutor Office. My key idea is to propose a compromise acceptable to all parties. It should reflect our national interest, but will allow all sides to withdraw from the conflict and save faces. I'd like to recall my own article from January 17 of this year in the Politicum edition with this question: have you ever been offering any assistance of those contacts that you have with the Trump's administrations? Yes, I did. Even so, from summer of 2016, I've offered countless times to help and to assist, to connect the current Ukraine administration with highly influential people from the Trump's team. But here's the answer I kept getting. Do not get involved in what's not is your area. It has been already decided Hillary Clinton is going to win. That's it. It is already a done deal. Do you remember what was going on in Ukrainian media? Do you remember the Facebook posts and articles of the Ukrainian politicians? How disgraceful it was. What was considered to be a blackmailing of a future president of the United States. So the Ukraine have got directly involved in U.S. Presidential campaign. Do you remember the conflict with Manafort and all of that? It is horrible. It is horrible. As for today, Ukraine has two options. We can either build a wall and separate ourselves from occupied territories and completely shut off from Russia and just fight with Russia until the last soldier, and then Ukraine going to be turned into what's considered to be North Korea. But my key idea is to propose for every side a compromise. It has to reflect the national interest, but also is going to help every side to get off the conflict to save with safe faces. Based on historical evidence like Panama, I remember that there was a peace treaty signed according to which the Panama Channel has been given to Panama. Do you remember that United Kingdom was fighting with China 300 years for the little strip of land called Hong Kong, and I mean there were two smart men found who were able to sit behind the table and negotiate this whole thing. So, and I just want to repeat, I've only negotiated, I've only proposed, I've only discussed, nothing else. We need to get out of the undeclared war with Russia and maintain country's border of 1991. The Minsk process is not suitable for this. It has no legal mechanism or public trust. This is evidential. Here are the results of national survey held by Razumkov Center. Sociology tells us that only 9% of Ukrainians are positive towards Minsk agreements. About a third of respondents, which is 30.2%, are negative towards results of Minsk agreement, and about a third, 32.6%, are neutral. A relative majority of respondents, 42.3%, believe that the question of status of the temporarily occupied territories of Donetsk and Lugansk regions must be submitted to a national referendum. 32.2% do not support this idea. Others, 22.4%, are undecided. Half of the population, 49.6%, would participate in a referendum on a status of the temporarily occupied territories of Donetsk and Lugansk regions, and 25.5% would not accept. 24.4% are undecided. Sociology confirms the ideas I express. Of course, they are annoying Mr. Poroshenko. After all, it indicates the failure of his policies. The Ukrainians paid for it with thousands of lives. Ukraine needs peace and a new peace plan. And it needs to be done not behind the back of the society, but on the basis of mutual understanding between parliament and citizens. Regarding the Crimea, the basis for the peaceful settlement on the peninsula might be an expert idea of a dual sovereignty or the international administration for the transitional period. This will allow to restore the Ukrainian sovereignty in and not to lose it completely. The peninsula shall not be leased. The peninsula shall not be leased. The peninsula shall not be leased. This is an axiom. We can talk, however, about the paid use of a selected infrastructure objects. In international law, the international law has a term for it, international lease of territory. We are talking about using, for example, a base for the Russian Black Sea Fleet, which has been used before, and the fleet is there anyway. Let me remind you that Sevastopol has been transferred to use by the Russian Federation on the terms of a bilateral agreement from May 28 of 1997, based on the status and condition of stay of the Russian Black Sea Fleet on the territory of Ukraine. Technically, Ukraine legally has leased Sevastopol over to Russian Federation. If these actions considered to be a crime by General Prosecutor Office, then it would be logical to press charges against ex-president of Ukraine, Mr. Kuchma, and Verkhovna Rada, who ratified this and other treaties. In 2010, the extended lease of Sevastopol all the way till 2047 has been signed in Kharkiv. The current Minister of Justice, Mr. Petrenko, has stated that he is not going to break the agreements in order to preserve a discount on natural gas. Mr. Lutsenko, the general prosecutor, where is the criminal case against Mr. Petrenko? And another very important aspect. We must remember the fate of the indigenous people of Crimea, Crimean Tatars. Their rights have been violated the most during the annexation. Russian invaders brutally prosecuting Crimean Tatar activists. The aggressor has banned the representative body of Crimean Tatars, the Midgelis. We have to invite leaders of the Crimean Tatars, Mustafa Jamilev and Rifat Chubarov, to develop a Crimean roadmap together. They should be among the negotiators on the Ukrainian side while developing the solution for the Crimean issue. In addition, we need to allow our strategic partner Turkey have a stronger voice. It's in their good interest to not allow Crimea get finally militarized. And one more thing, which is historical precedent. Russia in 1920, Russia has mortgaged the territory of Crimea in order to obtain a loan from the United States government in 1920. So the loan was $50 million. And in 1954, which is the year when the Russian Federation has given the Crimean Peninsula and under the Ukrainian jurisdiction. So in 1954, this was exactly the year when Russian Federation has to pay this loan back. And in order to avoid that, the Crimea, and this is what I believe, this is my personal conviction, that the territory of Crimea has been given under the jurisdiction of Ukraine in order to avoid paying their debt back. There was a project that was called New California. For those of you who don't know, New California is Crimea. And I'm convinced that due to the fact to avoid loss of the territory, the Crimea has been given under jurisdiction of Ukraine. So that's why Crimea is an autonomous republic under the jurisdiction of Ukraine. In order not to pay debt by the Soviet Union, I do believe that Mr. Stalin, he didn't need this geopolitical game at all. In 1943, during the meeting between Stalin and Roosevelt, there was a talk upon the return of the percentage, return of a percentage of the debt of that particular loan. And please understand, no one has ever mentioned this precedent. And de jure, this case can prove that Crimea belongs to the United States of America. But this is rather a subject for another press conference, and I'd like to continue. The problem of Donbass. If the Crimean problem gonna get settled quickly, we can propose to the society through providing the international temporary administration for Donbass. What is already suggested by experts, international administration under the leadership of the UN in 2-3 years will restore the rule of law in these areas and adapt them to the democratic elections. The amnesty process will occur along with the establishment of international tribunal. Constitutional reform should be comprehensive and not just about the status of certain regions of Ukraine. All key questions are decided and should be decided by a nationwide referendum. This is the highest degree of legitimacy of every decision. Sociology proves this approach. The Ukrainian authorities need to tell Ukrainians the truth about foreign policy. Ukraine will not become a part of NATO because before the resolution of the conflict with Russia, yet it is impossible to solve this conflict while we're still talking about joining the alliance. Now only a strong Ukrainian army and not the NATO guarantees the security of Ukraine. The declaration of a non-aligned status will eliminate the main obstacle to the compromise with Russia. We should strengthen our efforts to get moved from the logic of a conflict to the logic of peace. Ukrainians need peace, and now there is a chance to achieve it. We shouldn't criticize any person who stood on Maidan by the call of his heart, the same way we can't criticize anyone who wants peace in Ukraine and shares his passion with the world. I consider myself such a person. According to the sociology, there are 75% of Ukrainians who want peace. So I find it quite funny to hear of supposedly Russian roots in my action and proposals. When I announced the peace plan, I immediately went looking for support in the United States and not Russia. However, some MPs as well as the LPR leaders looked to Russia for the support. Irresponsible politicians and media are trying to use my name to harm President Donald Trump, to bring about everything he has talked during his presidential campaign. It is shame for me that I have given a chance to the liberal democratic media of the United States, who conduct an undeclared war against Trump's administration, to use my name for it. I am very sorry, Mr. President Donald Trump. But despite of it all, we must stop Russian aggression. The time of Minsk agreements is over. They did their job. It has saved us so much needed time, but now we need a new model of negotiations in the format of Budapest Memorandum. I believe it will bring peace to the Ukraine. My strategic goal has been achieved. I have highlighted Crimean issue and get back so much needed attention to the problem. May God bless Ukraine. Glory to the Ukraine.